Hello again, everyone. I'm Joe Longinusa, welcoming you to another edition of Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, the show where industry leaders, golf professionals, and legends all come and discuss the great game we love so much. So without further ado, let's turn it over to our host to tell us who's next on the tee. Chris, take it away.
Hey, thank you, Joe. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming back and joining me again today on Next on the Tee. We are brought to you by the great folks over at the French Lick Resort. There isn't a better place to stay and play anywhere on the planet than the French Lick Resort. You'll see why I say that when you check them out online at FrenchLick.com. I'm your host, Chris Mascaro, and today I have the extreme pleasure of having two of my favorite all-time guests joining me here on Next on the Tee, and that's Champions Tour player Bob Friend Jr. and the voice of golf, Peter Kessler. I'll get Bob's take on his alma mater, LSU, and their big come-from-behind win earlier this week. Plus, we'll see what's on tap for him this season on the Champions Tour and his memories of being paired with Tiger Woods at Tiger's very first event back at the 1992 Nissan LA Open. We'll hear also what's going on at his country club, Pikewood National, and he's a member over at Oakmont. So, you know, the Open's at Oakmont this year, so we'll get some thoughts on that from Bob as well when he joins me here in just a few minutes. Later this half hour, I'll talk with Peter Kessler about some of the great interviews that he's done with legends like Tommy Bolt and Greg Norman as well. Plus, I'll get him to reflect back on the reaction that he received from fans when he was at the 2002 Masters shortly after he left the Golf Channel. I think that's an amazing story for the reception that Peter got there. So he'll share some of that, and we'll talk a whole lot more when Peter joins me, like I say, here a little bit later in this half hour. So it's going to be a great show. I am so thankful that you've made the choice to listen to Next on the Tee and share the next hour with me. But let's start the show right by helping you start your mornings off right, and that's go check out our friends over at Aroma Ridge because they offer an array of the finest mountain-grown gourmet coffees that you're going to find anywhere. You can find them online at aromaridge.com. Their secret, hand-selected beans from a variety of coffee-producing countries from around the world. They roast those beans to perfection by their very own roast master. Those coffees are roasted specifically for you, and I mean that specifically for you because you choose which ones you want. And if you like a little flavor in your coffee, well, they have almost any flavor that you can imagine. Plus, you can sort of mix and match flavors to create one of your very own. I'm currently drinking the Wicked Jack's Tavern Butter Rum Coffee, which is fantastic. And not only are their coffees great, folks, but they're fantastic people as well. You're not going to find a better tasting coffee or better group of people anywhere on the planet than at Aroma Ridge. Try all of their great products. Check them out online, aromaridge.com. Next on the Tee is brought to you today by our friends over at the French Lick Resort in French Lick, Indiana. Folks, you want to talk about a spectacular resort to both play golf and to just sit back and relax and enjoy yourself? Well, like I say, you're not going to find a better place anywhere on the planet than the French Lick Resort. Go to FrenchLick.com to see for yourself. In the meantime, let's hear a word from our friends over there.
Now's the time to plan that golf getaway you've been dreaming about at French Lick Resort. We have new Golf Academy packages for 2016, guaranteed to take your game to the next level. Try our one-day Quick Fix Academy for golf emergencies. For more in-depth learning, try the Game Changer, designed to make you a better player. Our staff professionals are ready to work with you at French Lick Resort. Did you know there's only one place in the country that you can play courses designed by two members of the World Golf Hall of Fame on the same property? The Pete Dye and Donald Ross courses at French Lick Resort make us an ultimate golf destination for 2016. Check out the Ultimate Golf Package, the Hall of Fame Package, and other great offerings at FrenchLick.com. Let 2016 be that year you finally take your dream golf getaway at French Lick Resort. Play the courses champions play.
Folks, it's spectacular. My family and I had the opportunity to go spend some time up there last summer, and they're already asking me when we're going to be going back. The French Lick Resort needs to be on your list of places to stay and play. And oh, by the way, my friends, they have a casino right there on the property as well. For more information and to book your stay, go to FrenchLick.com. Every week here on Next on the Tee, we like to kick off the show by saluting the brave men and women that are serving in every branch of our military. We want to thank all of you for the daily sacrifices that you and your families make to protect the freedoms and our liberties that we get to share. We also want to thank our veterans and all that you and your families did for us over the years. It's through the strength of our military personnel that our way of life is even possible. Our sincere thanks as well to Sean Cruz and the wonderful folks over at the Armed Forces Radio Network. It's an honor for us to have Next on the Tee be a part of your network. You can find our show by going to armedforcesradionetwork.org. Also want to remind our veterans listening in out there, be sure to check out globalvoiceforveterans.org. It's a wonderful site with news and articles and a wealth of information specifically geared towards our veterans. I'm sure you're going to find it both interesting and beneficial to have on your regular reading list. Again, check it out, globalvoiceforveterans.org. All right, now making his sixth appearance with me on the French Lick Resort guest line is one of my favorite all-time guests, and that's Bob Friend Jr. Let me remind you a little bit about Bob's background. He's from my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Played his college golf at LSU, where he, David Toms, and the rest of their LSU teammates won the 1986 SEC Championship. Bob won the Pennsylvania State Championship in back-to-back years in 1984 and 85, and he turned pro in 1987. Played on the nationwide PGA and Champions Tours since 1990. He had 5 top 10 finishes his rookie year on what's now the nationwide tour, including a second-place finish at the El Paso Open. He got his first win at the 1991 Fort Wayne Open. He had 5 top 10 finishes in 1994 and 3 more in 97. In all, he's finished in the top 10 27 times and counting. Baseball fans, you're going to remember his father, who played in the major leagues from 1951 to 1966 with my hometown Pittsburgh Pirates, was a key to their 1960 World Championship team that beat the Yankees on Bill Mazeroski's home run in the bottom of the ninth in Game 7. Bob is also the Director of Operations at Pikewood National Golf Club in Morgantown, West Virginia, which is one of the most beautiful golf courses on the planet. And that's no exaggeration, my friends. Please go check it out online at pikewoodnational.com. They're also perennially in the top 100 golf courses anywhere in the world, ranked by Golf Digest. Last August, Bob finished tied for 8th at the Dick's Sporting Goods Open, finishing -9 after rounds of 68, 70, and 69. And I am thrilled that he is back with me and Next on the Tee again this morning. Good morning, Bob. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing great, Chris. Again, you're always the most well-prepared radio host in radio. You know more about me than I do.
I appreciate you saying that. I try to, I want to make sure that, our listeners listening in, know everything that they can about you as, come on the show, because you've had an amazing career and the things that you've been able to achieve, in the course of your time playing the game. But, Bob, I really, want to start off this morning getting an update on your father. How's your dad doing?
He's doing great. He's 85 years old, and he's in fantastic shape physically and mentally. He's been married to my mom now for a little over 58 years, and he's very active in Pittsburgh Pirate Alumni Association. He's the treasurer for the Alumni Association. It's a fantastic group, and group of guys, and they basically go out there and they raise a lot of money for charities. Their Pittsburgh Alumni Golf Tournament held every year in July at South Hills Country Club each year for the last 29 years has raised over $100,000 just each day. For the last 29 years. They've raised a lot of money for charities on that one-day event. They've got a lot of support from the Pittsburgh and the local communities, and that really comes from the fact that it's really nothing but a great bunch of guys from top to bottom throughout the Pittsburgh Pirate organization. So you've got guys there from the 60 World Series team and the 71 World Series team and 79 World Series team and all the other teams in between. So he's very active in that. He plays a lot of golf. He's, again, we've been longtime members at Oakmont, so it's fantastic being at the age of 52 and still having both my parents not just still with me, but also with me and lucid and active and a lot of fun.
Yeah, God bless him. And Bob, speaking of 79, what are your thoughts? Pirates bringing back the 1979, the gold shirts, the black pants, the pill top hats for their Sunday home games. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the Pirates, just like a lot of teams in baseball, have had they've had the various uniforms going throughout the year. I think the White Sox were probably the ugliest in history back in the mid-'70s, late '70s. But the Pirates, they've got a wonderful history. It's the third oldest team in the game of baseball, and they've won 5 World Series championships, and they're always trying to do something from a marketing standpoint to kind of just change the look a little bit. So. Again, that was 37 years ago this year that they won that World Series, and it's kind of hard to believe that they haven't won one since. But they've got a good product on the field now. with McCutcheon being the core of that team, and hopefully they're going to contend again this year for playoff opportunities.
Right. And Bob, before we get into your game and the upcoming season for you, I always like to kind of get your thoughts on your alma mater, LSU. Last week, your boys stormed back from a 5-shot final round deficit to Arizona State and went on to win by an amazing 19 strokes at the Prestige at PGA West. They were led by freshman Jason Ginsone, who fired a final round 64. Wanted to kind of get your thoughts on how your alma mater is doing. I thought they, amazing to me, defending national champions, and boy, they sure didn't get much love in the early season rankings, ranked 23rd currently, or 25th before this past week.
Well, they lost a couple of players from the core, but you've got Zach Wright, Brandon Pierce, and Eric Ricard. They are all returning from that national championship team, and they've really added some fantastic freshmen, as you said. Nathan Johnson, who ended up shooting 64 the last round there, but their last round scores there at that tournament out there at PGA West were 67, 71, 67, 67, 64. So they actually threw out a 71 the last round, and just you said they just stormed through it. They won the team championship, and Zach Wright, the All-American senior, was also the low medalist. So Chuck Winstead, we had a great team when I was there in the early and mid '80s with myself and David Toms and Rob McNamara, who's now at Farmington Country Club in Charlottesville, Virginia, and you had Emlyn Aubrey, who ended up playing on the PGA Tour for 8 years, and we ended up winning the Southeastern Conference in '86, and then they won another one, and I believe in '89, with Greg Lesher on that team and David Toms on that team, and then they really kind of went into a little bit of a spiral. They went through a number of coaching changes. None of them seemed to work. And then they brought Chuck Winstead in, who played for LSU in the early 90s. And Chuck is a tremendous teacher. They have an unbelievable world-class facility there in Baton Rouge at the University Club. It's a Jim Lipe, David Toms golf course. Jim Lipe was an LSU grad, LSU alum, and he was actually on the Nicklaus Design team. And so Jim Lipe, along with David Toms, have really beefed up that golf course, plays it about 7,800 yards long, obviously at sea level. And the facility, the range is, 350, 375 yards long. And they've got a facility at the far end for the golf for the men's and the women's teams. And it's just an absolute recruiting magnet. And what Chuck Winstead has done, along with the Tiger Athletic Foundation, have done unbelievable things for LSU. And they've put, obviously the national championship this past year, and they're off to another great start this spring. So I look for some great things from this team, and again, Chuck is, my hat's off to him. He brought in the number one Rolex Junior Player of the Year from Shreveport this coming year, and so again, they're just basically, looks like the football team where they're just basically reloading.
And Bob, before we take a look forward to your season this year, I want to take a look back at some of the things that you've done in your career, going back all the way really to your first victory, which was on the then Ben Hogan Tour, now the Nationwide Tour, the Fort Wayne Open, which was played at Orchard Ridge Country Club, which was also the site of the very first LPGA event back in 1955. Take us through your range of emotions, Bob, as you were getting ready to win your first tournament and pulling off that victory.
Well, it was a very interesting week. I had actually played the Pro-Am with the current Notre Dame athletic director. I think his name was Dick Rosenthal or Dick Rosenberg. It's a while ago. So 25 years. I'm 52. I've just had a senior moment. But he was the actual AD at Notre Dame, and on that we played that Pro-Am. At that time, there were 3-round tournaments. We played that Pro-Am on Thursday, and I actually shot 64 on my own ball that week, and then obviously shoot 64. You're playing pretty well. You're hitting the ball well, and went out the first round and shot 71, which was even par. And I was way back. It was not the most difficult of golf courses. Back in those days, a lot of the Ben Hogan Tour golf courses, they were nice golf courses, but I wouldn't say that they were championship golf courses in terms of the length. So you got to be really good with your wedges and drive the ball accurately. And then the next round, I shot 66 and kind of moved myself up a little bit into contention. And then the last day, ended up shooting 64 again. So really the 4 rounds, I shot 64, 71, 66, 64. And I actually got into a playoff with Dennis Trixler from California and a gentleman by the name of Jerry Anderson from Canada. Jerry was actually just inducted into the Canadian Golf Hall of Fame, I think, last week. But Jerry and myself and Dennis Trixer went into a 4-hole playoff, and I won it on the 4th extra hole. I hit a wedge from about 90 yards, hit it in there about 1.5 feet, and won the tournament. At that time, the first place was $20,000, and you get the big paper check. And at that time, it was like the most money that I had ever won in my early career there. And it really, what it did was it gave me the confidence that I could compete. And so later that fall, I ended up qualifying for the PGA Tour and got my PGA Tour card that December at the Greenleaf Resort. And it was a very easy Q school for me, and I really breezed through it. I think I probably averaged about 15 greens hit each day, and I really didn't putt all that well.
Wow!
Ended up finishing tied for 18th there at Q school, and I played my first full year on the PGA Tour the following season. But that victory in Fort Wayne meant an awful lot in terms of building confidence. As Jack Nicklaus says, winning breeds winning, and what the winning does and what being in contention time and time again does, it basically it builds up your confidence and your strong belief in yourself. And there's many seminal moments in a player's career. I know that for me, what really made me convinced that I could compete at the next level was in my last year of amateur golf in 1986. I won the Northeast Amateur by 8 shots. I won the Monroe Invitational match play tournament, which ended up having a lot of Walker Cuppers on it. And I also won the Mid-Atlantic Amateur that year, and played in my 4th consecutive U.S. Amateur. So that right there, that summer, kind of gave me the idea that I could compete at the next level. And then a number of years later, you sit out there and you play, and you realize, man, these guys are really good. And you go out there and you play and you compete. And for me, again, the next threshold was, again, winning in 1991 on the Ben Hogan Tour at the time.
And Bob, something folks may not know is you were paired with Tiger Woods at his very first PGA Tour event, the 1992 Nissan LA Open. You both shot an opening round 72, and then you beat him by 4 strokes in the second round. You shot 71, he shot 75. What was it like being paired with him at that event?
Well, it's one of those things where, again, my rookie year, that was really, I think, thinking back now, probably only my third tournament, second or third tournament of the year. The first one was Pebble Beach. But I got to L.A., and I was in the tournament, and they hadn't reshuffled any numbers yet. So my number was very, very good. And so they reshuffled the numbers after the West Coast. And I had gotten to L.A. and played my practice round on Monday and Tuesday. And then Tuesday afternoon around 1 o'clock, they come out with the tee times. And being a rookie on the PGA Tour, you're always going to be in that C group, which is the back of the bus, so to speak, where you always either – they've got the A group plays in the middle of the field. The B group is the guys that have not won. They play at the front of the bus. And the rookies, they all play at the back of the bus. And you're always bringing in pins at the end of the day. And so I got in around 1 o'clock after playing a practice run early in the morning and looked at the sheet. So I was paired with Dickie Thompson, who's a guy from Georgia, another journeyman professional such as myself, and Tiger Woods. And, we knew that, there was a lot of buzz there that, this kid was unbelievable. He's a reigning U.S. Junior Amateur champion. He's got an unbelievable golf swing, unbelievable game. He's going to be a great. And we all heard, all his comments from his father. And as a tour player, like, yeah, whatever. And, I knew from the very beginning, because he was from Southern California, I knew that the day was going to be a zoo, and it was a zoo, the first round especially, because he attracted so many photographers and media personnel that had absolutely no golf IQ whatsoever. And they were standing willy-nilly taking photographs while we were playing, and it required an awful lot of patience that first day. And but I can tell you, after playing with him, what stuck out with me, he was a skinny kid. He's about 5'10", probably about 145 pounds at the time. So he hit the ball as far as I did. He was long for a 16-year-old kid hitting it out to touring professionals. But what really impressed me was his moxie, his confidence, his quiet confidence, and his self-assuredness. He was wonderful to play with because he knew, as a young kid, you never know what they're going to be doing. He knew exactly where to stand all the time. He never stepped in anybody's through line. He was extraordinarily polite, very quiet, as he always was when he competes, even to this day. But you sat there and you got done playing. And at the time, you didn't think that it was something where I'm going to be an answer to a Trivial Pursuit question. At the time, you just thought, here's a kid that is 16 years old, and he had the moxie, the confidence, and the self-assuredness of what I would consider a four-time first-team All-American senior in college. I mean, he was that mentally tough and mentally mature at the age of 16. And, a lot of people, I got, the microphone stuck in my face, what do you think? And I think, obviously I thought, well, I think he's going to have a great future. And you never know. We've all seen the so-called sure things throughout our careers, the junior golfers that were, number one in the world and this, that, and the other. And by the time they finish their second year in college, they have lost interest in the game or they're burned out. And, by the time they're done with college, they don't even get into professional golf. So, but he was a very special kid, and obviously he's turned out to be a very, very special player in the history of the game.
Yeah, no doubt. And Bob, let's stick in the decade of the 90s, and you and I were talking off air. 1999, you had the opportunity to play at the TPC Scottsdale. You're going to have an opportunity to go back out there. Just curious to get your thoughts on what it's like to play at that, at the stadium course, particularly when during tournament time on 16. What's that feel like when you walk in there and now you're suddenly, it's like you're in the middle of a baseball stadium or a football stadium trying to play a golf shot?
It is, I tell you what, number one, it's a blast. Phoenix is a fantastic event. They get great support from the community. This year, I think the numbers, they had like 625,000 people out there for the week, which is unbelievable. And I know that when we were out there playing there, I know that they were north of 450,000 spectators for the entire week. And they get tremendous support. They donate a tremendous amount of money to their charities each and every year. It's a great event run by the Thunderbirds. But when you get out there and, you're playing and, you're kind of building up to it, especially at that time I was in that so-called B category where I had kept my card and I was top 125. So I was going off early in the morning, one of the first wave groups. And you walk from the 15th green, which is a par 5, and you walk through that tunnel. When you get out there, the whole gallery just kind of opens up in front of you. And the stands are packed from 8 o'clock in the morning on, and you get out there, and as soon as you come out there, they're there, and there might be chanting or whatever, and it's like, oh my gosh, and it's very, very loud. You've got the group on the green, and then as soon as they leave the green, then the noise starts to build to a crescendo. You're with your caddy, getting your fig. We've got 164 yards. I think it's an 8-iron, this, that, and the other, and the whole din is going on as you're doing this, and as soon as you start your routine, it starts to get a little bit more quiet. And then when you step into the ball and you address the ball, it's dead quiet. And, you're just thinking, I hope I don't shank this. And, you're one of the best players in the world, and you're just thinking, oh, my gosh, this is going to be so embarrassing. Just hit it on the club face. And fortunately for me, the 4 days that I played, I didn't make an idiot out of myself. I actually hit the ball on the green all 4 days, didn't get booed. But as soon as the club ball makes contact with the club face, they just explode into a loud roar. And if the shot is terrible, they will boo you. If the shot is great, they'll sit there and cheer. It's a fantastic atmosphere. The only thing that ever came close to that was at Greensboro when we used to play it in the spring at Old Forest Oaks in Greensboro. Their 17th hole, there was a par 3 similar, a little bit longer, about 220 yards. But they used the same thing. The people used to come out there in the lawn chairs, and it got loud, and they got a little bit into the adult beverages there as the day went on. So that was relatively similar. But the experience at TPC Stadium, the 16th hole, is like nothing else in golf. It's really amazing. It's a lot of fun.
And Bob, last year you played 5 events on the Champions Tour. Like I said in the intro, you tied for 8th at the Dick's Sporting Goods Open in late August. You had 3 great rounds, 68, 70, 69. You shot a final round 65 at the Toshiba Classic in November. You talked about confidence earlier, and now you're getting ready to launch into the 2016 season. How do you feel about the state of your game, and is that something you're building off of some momentum that you had towards the end of last season?
Well, no question. I mean, it's one of those things. As a golfer, you've got to have. I think that somebody, I can't remember who it was, but a writer said that golfers are eternal optimists, and you have to be an optimist to play this game because it is so damn hard. And so, you sit there and you try to, as a tour player, you don't try to get down on yourself. You try to be positive about everything. You try to think about how great you're putting, how great you're hitting it, this, that, and the other. You're looking for trends, and you try to be kind to yourself. I always tell students, I tell friends, I tell my children, all three of them play, that you have to talk to yourself like you're caddying for yourself. And so, a lot of times you sit there and you hear these guys talking badly to themselves. It's like, well, if he was caddying for him, he'd be fired on the spot. So you always have to be positive. When I take a look at what I've accomplished last year, again, I'm very fortunate because again, as you said, I'm PGA professional here at Pikewood National Golf Club in Morgantown. The owner of the club is the last 2 years, and this is my third year, has permitted me to go out and Monday qualify, and he supports that. And so when I go out and I qualify, should I qualify, I play for the week, and if I don't, then I come back and go to work just as all other PGA professionals across the country. But with regard to what I did at the Dicks, I got a sponsors exemption in there. And Ed Stack, the CEO and chairman of Dick's Sporting Goods, is a fellow Oakmont member, and we both serve on the board together. Ed is actually the president of Oakmont Country Club. And, he was very fortunate. Very fortunately, he gave me a sponsor exemption last year. When you get an exemption, the last thing you want to do is go out there and have a poor performance. So it was very important to me that I went out there and that I played real well at the Dicks. And the week before, I went and I worked with my teacher, Dr. Jim Suddy. He was out in Chicago at Conway Farms, and we kind of stumbled on a little, I guess you could say a little swing key, which is in the golf swing, the sequence of events on the backswing is your hands, arms, shoulders, and hips, and the sequence on the downswing is just the opposite, hips, shoulders, arms, and hands. And so what we worked on in Chicago was the idea of getting that club swinging away from the golf ball before my shoulders ever started turning. And so for me, the swing key for me is out of the corner of my eye. When that club starts to swing, I try to make sure that I can see the club head get past my right toe in my backswing before my shoulders ever start to rotate. So my shoulders are turning later in the backswing, which produces more coil and eliminates any lift in the backswing motion. And so we kind of stumbled on that, and then I'm instantaneously at Conway Farms started hitting the ball very, very well. And then I got to Endicott up there. We used to play the BC Open. We played the Dick's Sporting Goods Open. And all through my practice rounds, as a sponsor's exemption, you're doing all the pro-ams and all the parties, which is great. And I kept continually hitting the ball well, and again, got off to a good start shooting 68 the first day, and then played pretty good the second day shooting 70, and then shot 69 the last day I made a 7-footer at number 17, and I made about a 6-footer, number 18, both to save pars. At the time, I knew that I needed a par of the last two holes to finish in the top 10, and the top 10 normally gets you into the following week on the Champions Tour and PGA Tour, but on the Champions Tour, they only take one top 10. And Peter Sr., who I was paired with the first day, Peter Sr. shot 65. He beat me by a shot, and he got that top 10 spot advancing. But at the time that I knew that I needed to make those putts, I did. And whenever you have to make a putt, as all your listeners know and as you know, Chris, whenever you get up to a putt and you know you absolutely have to make it, and then you make it, I don't know if there's really anything more gratifying in the game of golf than standing up there and knowing you got to make one and you bury it. And so I did what I did there, and then later in the year I played very well the last round at Toshiba out there in Newport Beach. And, this year so far, I've played 2 qualifying opportunities. I missed both of them. I've been been up in the Mid-Atlantic where I haven't really been playing a whole lot of golf, but I played well. I shot 70 the first one at the Fountains. I missed by 4 shots. And then the last one over there in Fort Myers, Florida, I shot 72 in 30-mile-per-hour winds, and I missed by 2. And it was ironic that I was the last group off at 10:30, and all 4 guys that actually qualified for the tournament, they all played before 8:30. So they got about 2 hours where you didn't have any wind, and I played the entire trip in 30-mile-an-hour winds. You're hitting 6 irons from 130 yards out, which is normally a 175-yard club. So, that's all part of the draw. And then, as I said, as you alluded to, actually, I'm going to be headed out to Arizona here on the 6th, and the next qualifier is March 14th. And that's at Oro Valley down there in Tucson. And I'm looking forward to getting it done and getting in a tournament here soon.
I'm talking to Bob Friend Jr. here on Next on the Tee. I've got my next guest, Peter Kessler, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Peter in just a moment. A couple more before we let you go, Bob. I wanted to get your thoughts on this year's U.S. Open. You've talked about it here a little bit, that you're a member out there at Oakmont Country Club. So, we've had Eric Johnson, a good friend of yours, who's the director of golf out there on the show a number of times, and Eric likes to talk about how it's no joke that they actually slow the greens down for the U.S. Open from member play. Give me your thoughts on what we can expect to see this year out at Oakmont.
Well, I can tell you, first of all, Eric is correct. There's a number of it's the only golf course that I know in the United States, or really anywhere, that on daily play, Monday through Friday, they double cut and roll the greens, and the green speeds will be 12 to 13. On the weekends, we triple cut and roll the greens. Every single weekend, triple cut and roll. So you're looking at green speeds of 14 plus. If the weather is firm and fast, such as it was in 2007 when Angel Cabrera won with 5 over par, it is going to be so ridiculously difficult. When I was a player hospitality chairman for the 2007 Open, and I remember on Sunday afternoon, Lee Westwood, who at the time was going through kind of a downsizing, or I should say, in his game. He wasn't playing very well, kind of a down period in his game. He made the cut, but he didn't play very well. And so we were sitting there. We were getting caught up. We'd played a few times on the tour back in the 90s and whatnot. And I asked him what he thought about the golf course. He said, it's not my favorite golf course. He said, however, it's in my top 5. He said, but I will say this. He said, it's the ultimate examination. He said, there is absolutely no place to hide. And even the so-called easy holes, if you're off by a foot, it can make you look silly. So if it's dry and it's fast and firm, it's going to be a very, very difficult test. You're going to have green speeds there. They'll usually start at around 15 in the morning, which is a little bit slower than what we have them for in our SWAT, what's called the SWAT party, which is in the fall. So it's as Lee Torino said many years ago, it's the only golf course that he's ever played where you could host an Open with 1 week's notice.
Yeah. And as you also talked about your home golf club, Pikewood National. Tell our folks, remind our folks about Pikewood National, where it is, and what you guys have going on there.
Well, Pikewood National is a golf course that we designed ourselves. We opened all 18 holes in 2008. In 2009, we were named the best new private course in America. And in 2013, we've been ranked in the top 100 in the United States, ranked 44th currently in the United States, and 74th in the world in the 2014-2015 rankings. The golf course is tremendous. On a clear day, you can see 60 air miles, but the fairways are perfectly flat. It's impeccably maintained. It's got a fantastic practice facility. It's private. The facility is, 350 yards by 120 yards wide. We've got guest cottages on the property. I tell a lot of people, and I primarily handle the membership sales here, I tell a lot of people that if you were to go back in time and take a look at Pine Valley in 1920, this is Pikewood National Golf Club. It's basically Pine Valley in its infancy. And it's a tremendous project. The owner's completely committed to it. We're growing the club each and every year, and it just has an old-school, traditional type of feel. It's walking only, no carts, big caddy program, and our members just absolutely adore it.
How can our folks that want to take a peek at it, how can they find it online?
They can get online and go to Pikewood National, one word, PIKEWOOD, PikewoodNational.com. And the website's fantastic. We're owned by a large privately held company, and one of the things that we do, we also have radio stations. And the website was designed by a division of our radio company called Pikewood Creative, and the artwork and the video work is tremendous. So it's PikewoodNational.com, and it's a tremendous place, Chris.
And Bob, remind our listeners about your radio show and how they can find it to listen in.
Yes, my radio show will start the Monday after the Masters and run through the third week in August. It's called Tee to Green, and we stream it live on wvmetronews.com Monday nights from 7 o'clock until 8 o'clock each Monday night from the middle of April till the middle of the third week in August. Monday nights, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. We stream it live on wvmetronews.com. It's called Tee to Green. We get a lot of great guests. We get David Toms. We've had Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Dow Finsterwald, Davis Love, Tom Lehman, et al. So we get a lot of great players joining us on the show, and this year is going to be a great season for us.
There you go. And remind our listeners how they can follow you over social media as well, Bob.
I am at BobFriend_golf on Twitter, and occasionally we'll come out there and we'll send 140 characters or less. We'll prattle on about the game of golf.
There you go. Bob, thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to come back and be a part of the show. I always love the opportunity to get to talk to you. Best of luck this season, and I hope we get the opportunity to catch up with you again sometime real soon.
Well, Chris, it's a pleasure being on Armed Forces Radio, and like you, I cannot thank our men and our women that serve and have served in our armed forces. You protect our freedoms and our liberties, and it's the bravest job and most selfless job in the world. So thank all of you that are listening, and God bless.
Absolutely right. Bob, thanks again for being here. All the best to you and your father and the rest of your family. Thank you very much, and like I say, I look forward to the opportunity, hopefully catching up with you again real soon.
Thanks so much, Chris. God bless. Have a great weekend.
All right, you too, Bob. Best of luck. That is Bob Friend Jr., and I'm telling you, folks, you want to talk about a guy who's gotten so much out of his golf game. It does my heart good to know that Bob and I are roughly the same size, but, it's amazing to me. The guy's averaging, at times over 300 yards off the tee, and he certainly, ended last season on a very high note, and I'm hoping he's able to carry that forward for the rest of this golf season and on the Champions Tour. Be looking for him, Bob Friend Jr. All right, we've got our next guest, Peter Kessler, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Peter on the other side of this station identification.
You're listening to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, heard around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network.
All right, now back with me on the French Lick Resort line is the voice of golf, Peter Kessler. There is no one I admire and respect more that's associated with the game of golf and broadcasting in general than Peter Kessler. Peter has interviewed almost every major golf figure of the 20th and 21st centuries. In the early to mid-'90s, he was the voice of HBO Sports. He moved on to become the primary broadcasting talent when the Golf Channel launched back in January of 1995. Hosted his own show on SiriusXM's PGA channel. You can stream or download many of the outstanding interviews that Peter did with the legends of the game of golf by checking it out on iTunes, The Peter Kessler Show. If you also love the game of baseball and you're a big fan of the HBO documentary When It Was a Game like I am, the magical voice that you hear narrating that show is Peter Kessler's. And when I say this, folks, I mean it absolutely sincerely. When you talk about the great interviewers or the great show hosts of all time, no one has ever done it better than Peter Kessler. Good morning, Peter. How are you, my friend?
It's great to be with you. It was really nice hearing Bob's story. It's funny how many guys like that who you don't hear about regularly are able to make their life work, both working at home and getting their hands in on the tour money from time to time, and how good you have to play just to be able to make a few bucks. That was an inspiring story.
Thank you for saying that. And Peter, I want to start off our time this morning really just focused on the broadcast media and radio. I read an article that Golf Magazine did on you a while back, and in it you were quoted as saying, "I did about 1,300 live shows on the Golf Channel and 1,700 on SiriusXM. It took me about 13 seconds to make friends with being on television. It took me about 1,300 shows to figure out radio." Why? Why was it difficult for you to figure out radio?
I think it's because you're essentially alone. When you do television, you've got a guest with you, you've got people running the cameras, you've got a makeup person, you've got people who are relying on you, and it builds up the pressure, and it's a nice kind of a pressure for the right sort of temperament. And I used to really like that pressure, and I used to like having somebody sitting next to me and look into somebody else's eyes and not have to wonder about their body language like you do when you do radio. And I remember that the first time that I did a show at the Golf Channel, which was January 17th of 95, it was interviewing Arnold Palmer, and it was the first show of the Golf Channel, and the lights came on, and I introduced myself, and I started to introduce Arnold, and I hadn't even gotten to finish saying his name yet, and I realized that I was going to be completely comfortable just in those few seconds. And it turned out that I was completely comfortable, and that stayed with me for as long as I did television. But radio took me ages to get comfortable with. You're sitting in your studio with an acoustic partition, and you can't see anybody, and you don't know if your guest is looking up stuff on Google or whether he's really paying attention. Has he finished speaking, or is he merely taking a breath? Is he enjoying the interview? Because I can't see his face, so I can't really tell for sure. So there's so many question marks when you do radio, and you're having to, just for example, if you and I talked on the phone every day, at one point we would speak at the same time, and it's really important in radio to not step on the other person. So you as the host, and you know this as well or better than I do, you're waiting to make sure the guest is finished as opposed to taking a breath and going on. You've got to listen very, very hard. Where on television you can just look at the person and listen less hard because you can see body language and facial expressions and tone of voice and put it all together. Radio, you're working harder. So, yeah, I found it a very difficult transition, and I have a lot of respect for guys like you who make it sound so comfortable and easy.
No, I appreciate you saying that. Peter, through the course of the thousands of interviews you've done, anyone ever throw you a curveball that really caught you off guard?
Not really. I mean, I tried to know the answer to all the questions before I asked the questions so that you're never surprised and never get taken somewhere where you're not prepared to be taken. So I tried to really have a good feel for what the guest was going to say and how long he or she was going to take to say it so that I could build a 1-hour show and get in all my questions and still get in all the answers and not have to get rid of some of my questions or add questions as the show went on to really try to get the timing of it as perfect as could perfect be. And no, I don't think anybody ever threw me a curve. Now, there were some interesting moments. I mean, I guess unexpected answers certainly came from Gene Sarazen, who was 95 at the time I interviewed him in 1997. And according to his family, it was one of the best memory nights that he had had in a couple of decades, and he remembered everything I could have possibly brought up. And he told me a story that I didn't know, that in the 1920s, when he lived 40 miles north of New York City and would take the train into town, that there was one stop at Pelham where if he arrived at the right time, the Ziegfeld Follies showgirls were getting on the train to go into New York for their daily rehearsal and show. And he said there was this blonde that he used to flirt with on the train tracks, but she wouldn't give him a tumble, as he put it. And he said 60 years went by. It's 1985. He's at a golf tournament in California. Someone comes up to him and says, "A woman wants to see you." And he says, "What would a woman want with an old man like me?" And he goes over, and a blonde woman says, "Do you remember me?" And he said, "I looked her over, and I didn't remember her." And she said, "Well, I'm the blonde you used to flirt with on the train tracks in 1925. And she said, "I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Mrs. Bob Hope." And he did that for an hour. At the end of the show, it was funny. It was one of the 2 or 3 shows that we actually taped. This one was north of Atlanta at Chateau Elan, a resort and golf course that he had a relationship with. And normally for a show, over the course of a week prior to a show, I would probably have 5 or 6 pages of legal pad with notes on it, and I would cull it down to a single sheet by showtime and just stick it in my pocket and refer to it at a break if I needed to. Well, for some reason, I had the entire Sarazen show with me up there, and so it was like 5 pages of notes, and we were in the last commercial break, and I pulled out my notes to see if there was anything I'd forgotten or anything I wanted to do that I still had time for. And then the cameraman says, "You've got 10 seconds, Peter," and I couldn't get the papers back in my pocket. They wouldn't go in. I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm crushing it, and it won't go in. And Sarazen starts to laugh. And finally I took the whole thing and wadded it into a ball and threw it over the top of the camera. And we came back, and Sarazen had his head back and was still laughing, and we had a really nice, light, and carefree kind of final segment without diluting the material at all. It was just a perfect wind-up to have it turn out to be friendly at the end and with laughter. So he was an unexpected treat. I had some shows where some people gave me incredibly short answers, a lot of yes and no stuff, and I actually had somebody once nod an answer to me. So that was difficult. But normally and you know this just as well as I do. Normally, when you're getting ready to host somebody, you do as much homework as you can on that person to try to get a good feel and come up with the questions that you know that person will do a good job on and give you the length answers that you're kind of anticipating, so that you don't have too few questions to go around for the guest's time on your show.
And Peter, tell me about the time you were interviewing Tommy Bolt at the 2005 U.S. Open at Pinehurst. You asked him about, Ben Hogan, because Hogan had won his first golf tournament there. Tell me about what that how that interview transpired.
I can't repeat anything that happened in a Tommy Bolt interview. The language was so unbelievable. I mean, I used to ask him questions like, why was Hogan such a long hitter if he wasn't a big guy and he didn't have a lot of muscles and he didn't work out a lot and he had the bad leg and all this other stuff? And he would say that blankety blank would whip that club through there so blankety blank that you couldn't blankety blank believe. I mean, it was the whole thing, and it was as bad as you could possibly imagine. So he didn't tell me many stories that were repeatable, but I'll tell you what, he was one of the joys of my life. I played a lot of golf with him when he was 90. For some reason, that was a year that I played a bunch with him. And at the age of 90, he could still hit at 255, 260. And
wow.
his hands did not go above, certainly didn't get as high as his chest. Somewhere between his belt buckle and his chest was as high as he could get his hands. But every shot was in the exact middle of the club face. You could look at his driver after 3 weeks and it would have one mark on it. It was the most amazing thing, and he never missed greens, ever, ever, ever. I'll bet I didn't see him hit 3 bunker shots in all the time I played golf with him, and I played a lot of rounds with him. And if he would miss a green, he would pretend that he never had a chip like that one before. I mean, it could be a 20-foot straight chip off of a good lie going slightly uphill, no break, no nothing, just straight forward. And he would take a look at it, and he would mourn woefully, and he would say, man, I've never had a shot like this. And then he would chip it in. He'd go, boy, that was a tough one. And he was great to play with. I saw him shoot 69 from the members' tees when he was 90. And the last time that he played, to my knowledge, was with me. We played the short course out at Black Diamond in western Florida. And we came to the last hole, which was a par 3. And he was a genius with a 5-wood. He could hit it anywhere from, say, 160 to maybe 205, 210 even. And he could do anything you wanted him to do with that golf club. He could hit it straight up in the air and have it come straight down with no forward motion. He could cut it, he could draw it, he could slice it, he could hook it. He could hit these huge high shots that drew or faded just a couple of feet and would sit down. He could get to back pins running it along the front of the green. And on this occasion, he just hit a typically terrific 5-wood about 25 feet from the hole and rolled in the putt for a 2. And he said, boy, he said, that's it for old Dad. I'm glad you got to see it. And that was the last time. That was the last time I saw him, and it was the last time I saw him play. And right after that, his wife took him to some reservation or somewhere up in Arkansas where he still had relatives from when he was a little boy up there. And he passed away about 18 months later. I don't know that he played any golf up there or what he was up to, but you know, he had a routine at Black Diamond Golf Club where he lived, where he would have soup at home. He had some digestion problems. He'd have soup at home, and he'd come to the course, and he'd be all in purple and white, you know, with a great white cap and purple socks and white shoes. I mean, he was great. He looked great in clothes, and he would come out and play his round, and then come in afterwards and ask for what was his drink? A Pinot Noir, and or a Cabernet Sauvignon, he would call it. And he would have a drink, and then he would get in his Cadillac and he would drive the 2 minutes to his house, and you'd see him the next day or whenever he went up again. But they loved him there. We used to have a surprise birthday party for him every year that he knew was going to be the birthday party for him every year, and he'd walk in all decked out and greeting people, and then he'd walk right to the front of the room, and we'd have 2 chairs set up and do an interview, and he just told great stories, and he made half of them up. I mean, he used to tell this story about, he used to tell this story about when Hogan taught him to move his left hand more on top of the club and make it into a more neutral rather than strong position, that Hogan used to hide behind trees and watch him play. Well, how could you see anything? You're going to see the guy's grip hiding behind a tree. So he used to make up crazy stories like that. But, how he taught Arnold to throw clubs in the direction of the green so you could pick them up as you were walking. So you never had to go backwards or go into the woods to get them. And I'm not sure that that's true either, but it just made him more colorful. And, he said he never threw a club, he only tossed them, which was completely different.
Peter, tell me about the 2002 Masters and the response that you received from fans following your exit from the Golf Channel.
Well, that was really nice. Actually, the 2002 Masters was just a couple of weeks after Bobby Jones's 100th birthday, which fell on March 17th of 2002. And I got invited to host his centennial birthday celebration on his birthday a couple of weeks before the Masters. And so they asked me what my fee was, and before I could get out a word, they said, we could always have you play, and I went, yeah, that's what I want to do, Augusta National. And so I played the big course and the little course on March 16th of 2002, and it was an incredible experience. It's really hard. I don't know how the members play it. It's a really hard golf course. Those greens are insane. They have little tongues and little plateaus and things that are almost coffin-shaped where you have to leave your ball on top of the coffin or else it's going to fall off and run forever. I mean, really, really difficult greens. I mean, they look really difficult on TV, but they're more difficult in person. The break is unbelievable. If your ball's in the wrong place on the green, and usually their ball is in the right place on the green, you just have an impossible putt with too much break and too much slope, and just too much for anybody to be able to get a sensible stroke on. So it's amazing how well these guys play it. But I was struck by the difficulty of the greens, and the par 3 course was so great that you could never play golf anywhere else other than there and still have a very rich and full golf life, and just an incredible short course, and the food was great. And the dinner the next night was really successful and a lot of fun, and there was nobody in that room who didn't either know Jones or have a relationship with him. It was only people who knew Jones and his entire extended family. And I thought as the host I should tell them a Bobby Jones story, but any story that I knew except for one, which I did tell, somebody in that room was going to know the story. So I just told the one about how 25 years earlier I had gotten into bed at home and it just turned midnight, and I turned to my wife and said, good night, sweetheart. And she said, we're going to have the baby tonight. And I said, we're going to have the baby tonight. And I said, wow. I said, it just turned March 17th. That's Bobby Jones's birthday. And she looked at me and she said, it's my birthday too. So that's a true story. And she eventually started to speak to me again. But yeah, I said to her, it's Bobby Jones's birthday. And she said, it's my birthday too. And I knew nobody in the room could know that story, so that's the one that I told.
And it's interesting to me because I asked you why, what the reception you got from the fans is, because, like I say, it was not that long after you left the Golf Channel, and they really embraced you there. And I read in the article again in Golf Magazine that it made you cry because of the appreciation that they showed to you. Do you remember that?
I sort of remember. I mean, people were really, really nice. I had just gotten fired from the Golf Channel a couple of months before. I thought unfairly at the time. I still think unfairly now. And yeah, people were always terrific to me. When I showed up somewhere in public, the people who watched the Golf Channel were very appreciative of the work, and really seemed to like it a lot, and I was always touched. I mean, if I had tears in my eyes that year, I certainly believe that, because I frequently would get filled up when somebody said that they had enjoyed some time spent, with me watching my shows, and that was the highest flattery, that they'd actually take time out of their day and watch something that I was doing, because it might bring them some pleasure, and apparently it brought a number of people some reasonable pleasure. And so, yeah, I was always, and remain grateful too. I mean, people still recognize me. I remain very appreciative of the fact that people like the work. It's that's the bit about it that's great, is that they like the work.
Yeah, and Peter, like I say in your introductions, and I've said it many times on this show and elsewhere, making the turn with Peter Kessler and all the shows that you've done are simply outstanding. I mean, and I mean this. You're the greatest interviewer in the history of the game of golf, and maybe in all of sports. Why is Making the Turn not on the air anymore? Why don't we see you every week?
Well, I did the show on Sirius XM for 10 years, and we used to have, like you do, we used to book a few guests, the best and most eclectic guests that we could organize, and I had a great producer who did that. But then they wanted to change the show to only taking phone calls and not having golf's brightest people on the show. And I tried that for a little while, but you didn't get a good general broad section of the golf playing public. It was, because of the time of day, I suppose, it was always guys in a truck. I'm out on Route 95, I'm out on Route I-4, and it's fine to take a certain number of those, but the show became largely those calls, and there would be interference, and there would be noises, and you would have trouble hearing guys sometimes, and there would be horns blowing or trains going by, and it was a difficult experience. And I told them that I wanted to have guests on again, and they said, no, we don't want guests, we just want you to take phone calls. And so we sort of went back and forth, and after 10 years I thought, well, maybe I've had enough, and so we just sort of ended up agreeing that the new format wasn't making sense, and that they were going to try to do something new anyway, and fill it up with instruction largely. So they got Annika and Larry Rinker and Hank Haney and a few other guys to basically do instruction. We used to do a lot of it on our show, but then they went to shows that did it full time. I could have hosted a show like that. That would have been cool. But they started having those people who host their own show. Like Ledbetter is his own host, and Hank Haney is his own host. So there became fewer opportunities there because of that, and fewer opportunities because of the taking the call thing. So it just ended the way that it did. But it was fun. It was a fun show. Again, it took me a long time to get really comfortable with the process, but once I did, I relaxed a lot more and had a much better time with it. And I was sorry that ended. That was a lot of fun.
But with so many sports outlets today and the advent of ESPN Classic and things of that nature, having the guests and even the shows you've already done, it seems like a natural to me that that those would get picked up or placed on an outlet like that. Why haven't other folks come calling? Because like I say, it's all fantastic stuff.
I'm not sure of that. If you know some people who were looking for somebody like me, please give them my number. But no, it's hard because nobody has clamored for short or long form golf interviews, which is what I'm best at. I could do other sports. I could do baseball. I could do tennis. Could probably do basketball. I might be able to do football, but I wouldn't be as good as I am at golf because I know golf pretty well. The other sports I know well, but golf I know better. So, when I left the Golf Channel, there wasn't a lot of need for golf shows on other channels. They just weren't doing it. NBC would occasionally, show a documentary from 1 to 2 on a Sunday afternoon before the coverage of the U.S. Open or something like that. but it wasn't something that they did regularly, and it wasn't something that they had a very big appetite for. So, I was sort of stuck in that I wasn't able to do those shows because nobody really had a need for them, and I understood that. So it remains tricky in that sense because while there's still a lot of sports outlets, there's not a lot of places where there are golf shows that you can go watch. You can watch golf tips, but in terms of sit-down interview shows, there's very little, if any at all, out there anywhere.
I'm talking with the voice of golf, Peter Kessler, here on Next on the Tee. Peter, a couple more before we let you go. I wanted to get your thoughts on the Golf Hall of Fame. It's starting to feel to me like it's becoming the Hall of the Pretty Good, because they feel like they need to induct someone every year. How do you feel about the Hall of Fame?
Well, I feel about it like you do, and how other, reasonably informed people around the game of golf feel. I mean, Mark O'Meara getting in with 16 wins and 2 majors was, 4 wins short. Freddie Couples getting in at 15 wins and 1 major. I mean, that's the most amazing stat to me is in 30 years, he won 15 times and won 1 major. I mean, he should have had a Vijay Singh-like career with 3 or 4 majors and 40-some-odd wins, or a Phil Mickelson career with 40-some-odd wins and 5 major championships. I mean, Freddie should have had a real, super career, and given the quality of his golf striking, it was woefully underperformed. And even now, I mean, I remember as soon as Zach Johnson won the Open at the Old Course last year to go along with the Masters victory for a total of 12 victories over his career, Ron Whitten of Golf Digest wrote, "Welcome to the Hall of Fame." And I'm going, it's not a Hall of Fame just because you won at the Old Course and the Masters. You have to do more than that. I would make the very minimum 20 tournaments plus 2 majors is the very minimum that you should win. And that would leave off Crenshaw, and that would leave off Kite, and it would just get Greg Norman in, and it would have left off Freddie, and it would have left off a lot of guys with numbers in their teens that just don't make any sense. But, they have an awards ceremony every year, so they need to award someone. But even this business of the LPGA, the standards for the World Golf Hall of Fame are lower than they are for the LPGA Hall of Fame. You would think it would be the other way around, that the World Golf Hall of Fame would be tougher to get into. But you've got people like Dottie Pepper, Laura Davies getting into the World Golf Hall of Fame where they're not getting into the LPGA Hall of Fame. So I agree, it's become the Hall of the Pretty Good as opposed to the greatest players of all time. Freddie Couples and Mark O'Meara are not a trip down history lane. Sorry.
You once asked Greg Norman to step outside himself and kind of look back at himself objectively and answered the question, how many majors should Greg Norman have won? And after saying that no one had ever asked him the question quite like that, kudos to you. Let me turn the question back to you. How many majors do you think Greg Norman should have won, and does he fit, in the Hall of Fame?
He should have won 8 to 10 major championships. I mean, he, along with Craig Wood, is the only guy to lose all 4 majors in a playoff, and that's not easy to do. And so many others, slipped away. The Bob Tway, the Larry Mize. I mean, just, then Tway was in regulation, so that's not even one of the misses in playoff overtime. Yeah, I mean, it's the same answer he gave me. He said 8 to 10. And I agree with him, 8 to 10 would have been the right number. I mean, he was the longest, straightest driver of a golf ball on tour for 15, 17 years. Everybody acknowledged it. And he was a great putter from 15 feet, which is roughly the distance that guys are trying to hit their shots with irons from the fairway. If they can get, within 15 to 25 feet on an average shot with anything other than a pitching club, they consider that a good shot. And that was a distance like Jordan Spieth today putts from that distance that Greg was exceptionally good at. So if you drive it that long and straight and you putt that good, you should be winning a lot more tournaments than you did. I mean, he won, 20 in the United States and he only won 2 majors, which is really hard to believe. And I made 20 and 2 the minimum that you get in the World Golf Hall of Fame. So I would say yes, he gets in the World Golf Hall of Fame, but at the lowest possible rung on the ladder, and is somebody who got less out of his game perhaps than any other terrific player. You can't put him in the great category. You can put him in the very good category because he lost too many tournaments. He gave away too many tournaments. He didn't close enough tournaments. He didn't win enough majors. Here's another guy who should have had 45 or 50 wins and 5 to 10 major championships. No problem. No problem at all, but he didn't.
One more before I let you go, Peter. I'm just curious. You, like I say, you've done so many interviews. Most fun you ever had doing an interview?
Well, that Saracen interview was a lot of fun. I mean, anything with Arnold was a lot of fun. Anything with Gary Player and Arnold at the same time was a lot of fun, and Gary would always accuse Arnold of being somewhere in the world where the two of them were playing an exhibition, and that Arnold would pass gas while he was getting ready to hit a putt, and that Gary would call him on it, and a member of the gallery said, "I saw you do it." And Arnold used to get very upset about that particular story that happened in Japan. And Gary Player said, birds do it, bees do it, human beings do it. And you could see Arnold's face getting completely red because he'd heard Gary tell that story before, and he knew exactly where he was going, and he wasn't happy about it. So those were always fun interviews. Gary Player was a great interview. He would kick balls, he would pump his knees, he would lift things up and look like he was exercising. I mean, he was always a great deal of fun. I enjoyed, all of them really. I was pretty lucky. I was able to get guys to relax who weren't otherwise going to relax. I was able to get good stuff out of good people. I was able to get great stuff out of great people. So most of them went pretty much according to what I expected. Byron Nelson was a great interview, remembered everything that always happened to him. Johnny Bulla, who used to hang out with Sam Snead at the beginning of their time on tour in the 1930s, was a great interview. He used to fly Bobby Jones around during World War II and would talk about the Bobby Jones that really was, not just a American Idol. So that was great fun, and every once in a while I still get to do a print interview for somebody, and they're still great to do. So I'm envious of your ability to be able to do this a few times a week and get people on the phone and talk to them about what they were good at or what they think about things.
I appreciate you saying that. Peter, before we let you go, for golf fans like me, there isn't a better way to spend a Saturday morning than getting to listen to you share your stories and your insights and the experiences that you had. I can't thank you enough for continuing to do it and be a part of the show. Remind our listeners how they can find your shows and the interviews that you've done.
You can go on iTunes. There's the Peter Kessler Show, which is the audio of a number of shows that I've done over the years. I haven't written anything for a while, and I do tweet at Peter Kessler when I find something, that I think is really interesting to say. There's a lot of tweeting going on there that's missable. So that's where I can be found right at this moment. And I'm working on a couple of things. There's a couple of potential shows that I might do for an all-online sports network that I'm in talks with. Hopefully Monday things will progress further, and I'll keep you posted if that works out.
Yes.
And they can, of course, hear me on your show.
Peter, you are truly the greatest interviewer and storyteller that's on the planet. I can't thank you enough for coming back and being a part of today's show. I hope you'll continue to join me from time to time because I just get such a kick out of having you share all the wonderful experiences that you've had over the course of your career.
When you're ready, I'm ready, partner. I really appreciate being on the show. I appreciate your good questions. I appreciate that this is for the armed forces. It's all really cool stuff.
Thank you, Peter. All the best to you and your family, my friend. I hope to get that update very soon about where you're going to be and where our listeners can continue to hear you do the great stuff that you've done. Please share that with us when the time's right.
Thanks. Great to be with you, Chris.
All right. Take care, Peter. That is Peter Kessler. And folks, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not just saying it because Peter was a part of the show today. And I've had the extreme pleasure the last several years of co-hosting this show with Peter. And as we do a Masters preview special with Gary Player, radio doesn't get any better than the opportunity to sit back and listen to Peter talk to Gary Player, and the privilege doesn't get any higher than having the person that you consider to be the greatest interviewer of all time listening to and talking with a guy who's one of the greatest players in the history of the game of golf. So that's the highest honor that I get to have is to be, just a small part of an opportunity to listen and be a part of a show with those two guys. But I can't thank Peter enough. Hopefully we hear some great things about what Peter is going to be doing in the very near future. So I'll keep you up to date as I hear back from Peter. All right, folks, it is time for me to put a bow on this episode. Before we close up shop, I want to remind you about our friends and our new partner, PGA Tour Pro Jim Estes and the great folks over at the Salute Military Golf Association. Let's hear a word about the great things that they are doing over there.
The Salute Military Golf Association was created to provide rehabilitative golf experiences to the brave men and women who have been wounded while serving our country. Hi, I'm Jim Estes, PGA Golf Pro and co-founder of the Salute Military Golf Association. With my adaptive golf program, we've successfully helped thousands of soldiers in their recovery, both mentally and physically. The SMGA has been providing family-inclusive golf experiences across the country since 2007. To date, the SMGA has equipped more than 1,000 warriors with properly fitted golf clubs and has extended its clinic series to more than 8 chapter and affiliate locations across the U.S. If you are a wounded veteran interested in participating, or if you'd like to learn more about the Salute Military Golf Association and find a chapter closest to you, visit our website at smga.org. We've seen firsthand how impactful golf can be in aiding one's recovery. The Salute Military Golf Association, empowering wounded veterans one fairway at a time. Visit smga.org. That's smga.org.
Yeah, they're doing some amazing things there at the Salute Military Golf Association. To find out more information and how you can get involved, check out smga.org. All right, everybody, my sincere thanks again to Bob Friend Jr. and Peter Kessler for joining me today and making today's show so much fun for me to be a part of. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Please check out our sister show, Thursday Night Tailgate, with me and my co-host Bob Lazari and our announcer Joe LaGianusa. That show airs live every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can hear it on Blog Talk Radio, the Armed Forces Radio Network, plus great places like iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player.fm. We're all over the net. That show, we talk to legends from around the NFL and the CFL every single week. We typically have 5 to 7 current or former NFL or CFL players join us. Please also check out both shows on Facebook. Give us a like. That's important to us as well. You can find this show, nextonthet.net, and ThursdayNightTailgate.com. Check out our own sites there. You can stream or download any of our archive episodes for free, folks, plus keep up to date with who some of our future guests are going to be. I can't thank you enough for choosing to listen to Next on the Tee again today. I really appreciate it. We appreciate you guys the very most, along with our brave military men and women serving across the world. Thank you for what you do. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.
You've been listening to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, where PGA and LPGA legends, pros and top instructors, and media members go to tell their stories. Join us the same time every Saturday to hear more stories about the game we love from the people who love sharing those stories with you. It's all about the great game of golf. It's all about the great game of golf.